Okay, we are live June 1st, 2025. This is the IPS evening deprogram. I was up late last night working on the newest addition to our bot farm. And it's not a bot farm, really, it's AI agents. There's a pretty significant distinction here. The latest bot is the IPS stenographer. And if you go into the Discord server, every 4 hours, the bot will go through the latest comments and create a succinct summary with 5 quotes, infographic, and it will post it in the summary room. And if you want a summary over what was just talked about, you would just use the command !summary, and the stenographer will provide you a synopsis. And it's totally it's automated. I had been creating these before, where I would just go through and I would copy and paste a lot of stuff, use ChatGPT and render a summary with an infographic, and then share it so people would know, hey, here's what you're missing if you're not in the IPS Discord server or Gilded, which was our focus at that time. And I thought this would be great if I could automate it. And so last night I asked ChatGPT and wrestled with it for a while. And then I went over to Grok. And with the assistance of Grok, I was able to make the bot activate it on Discord. And you can go and see it now. Joined by Austin108, Penguin Doctor, Penguinati, Auto Hoaxer, Josh Lebsock, Diana Southard. Ears Up, Frank Murr, thank you for joining. Lots to talk about. This is really mind-blowing stuff if you're not sure of how this works. I mean, for us, it's just normal. This is just news for us. I mean, nightly news. But basically, I've made it a point to say that when I watch a movie, I prefer to see it in the theater because context matters. It's not just about going inside of the big black cube, but it's rather the trailers, what's right before it. My contention being, you are primed for programming, and they're going to put some ideas into your head right up front when you're wide awake. And each time I've been vindicated, where I see a trailer, for example, Sinners or Mickey 17, and I say, hey, I saw a trailer for Mickey 17, looks like some Luigi guy. But a lot of it is based upon fake staged events that steer everything. So our reality is news bent. The news bending is the process of using fake news to dominate headlines and steer the big picture, and the fake news happens to correlate with what's going on in the realm of entertainment, not just the movies, but the novels, the video games, especially the video games are huge in this. But this is a predictable pattern because we're looking at a model of information propaganda parallel to entertainment propaganda, and we're looking at it holistically. And we're arriving at these subtexts, these bigger pictures. What I call the metascript is really, again, the big story that becomes history. Because what do you think fake news does? Look back at 30, 40 years of fake news events or news-bent news cycles like fake news bent. And again, this is a reference to 1968 newsbenders. But if the fake news or the psyops, the staged events dominate, then they don't have to fake everything. But just going back recent history, you can't argue it's objective. You open any history book, it's going to reflect what was on CNN. It's not going to reflect what we're talking about. So we're just looking at systemic fakery. Now, I'm talking about movie trailers and how frequently these actually do contain significant examples of programming material, like the Captain America Brave New World trailer that was released on 7/12, the day before Trump was shot and the president gets shot. And they had to change the trailer because it was so reminiscent of that. And that's just the surface. When we analyze that trailer, it had many more connections to Butler. I've been recently talking about Mickey 17, where Mark Ruffalo plays a Trump-esque character. And by the way, he was born on JFK's death day. But Mark Ruffalo is playing a Trump-like character who is talking about colonizing an all-white planet. He gets shot at by the Luigi guy, and a bullet scrapes his cheek. And then he poses for the camera. This was recorded in 2022. How did he mirror what just happened to Trump with such accuracy, and not just the bullet in the cheek, but the posing in front of the camera so conspicuously? But with the recent movie, the one I just went to go see, Final Destination, and it opens up with the scene of the Space Needle being destroyed. But in the scenario, as it may play out in the real world, what precedes the Space Needle being destroyed? Some kind of EMP attack, some kind of nuke, rather. Nuke, EMP, these things go together. Electromagnetic pulse. And the trailer for the Fantastic Four was right before Final Destination. So I'm looking at these things in sequence because I put it all in my notebook, and I'm realizing that what I saw in Fantastic Four makes perfect sense given in sequence, given that it shows something coming down from the sky, a big explosion in space above a city. It has Space Needle like structures in the background. There's a Space Needle in various scenes. I think it's the Space Needle, but regardless, it then shows the Earth from outer space as a globe going dark. So there's your EMP. And then it goes right into the movie where the Space Needle is being destroyed. So the idea of a nuke being associated with the Space Needle makes sense because in the movie, it's destroyed by a penny falling into the gears, which doesn't make any sense. But the significance of the penny is something else altogether we've been talking about. But I want to add on to this because there's been something that was pointed out. This was in our Discord server. If you're not in our servers, you're missing out on some great research. So this was posted by, was it Warrior Monk? No, Cubstar. So this is a magazine called Empire. July 2025. It's called Empire. And it has the Fantastic Four. Now, back when Ghostbusters came out, it was Frozen Empire. And then you had the Godzilla King Kong. I think it was called A New Empire. But I started pointing out that EMP at the front of Empire seems to be code, like Frozen Empire, Nuclear Winter. So EMP also would correspond to the Space Needle. We've been talking about the significance of the electronic music project right there. But this is a magazine called Empire, and if you look closely at the P on EMP, what do you see? A Space Needle right over the P. And this EMP Space Needle thing it is a very consistent pairing. For example, the finale of Westworld with the skull, with the Space Needle-like structure inside, has the EMP-like event at the end. But this is the movie, the trailer of which I'm describing was right before you see the Space Needle being destroyed in Final Destination. So if you connect it here, EMP, Space Needle, something falling from the sky, city blowing up, and then, of course... And I think there's something else here. The Human Torch. I think there was some kind of Human Torch suggestion. It was going to be played by the guy who played Elvis. Let's see what else. We have a few others joining us. And if you want to get into the Discord, you just have to join the Substack or the Tim Oz. I have links posted. So it's a little bit paywalled. But if you're a member here, if you're a Blue Wrench member on YouTube, you just go to the posts, and I have a link there for you. Joined by Ears Up Esteban. Says, this guy has made watching other channels unbearable, the lightweights in comparison. Let's go. Says, IPS and our think tank is the best on the internet. Well, we're talking about expanding it. We took a time of quarantine to establish that what we're doing is separate from Trutherville. We cannot, we could be friends with propaganda mules and Q addicts and red pill junkies, but that doesn't mean that they have a place in the off-world stage. Not that they're disinvited, but the way this works, I think a better analogy is the sea of irrelevance, where we've been flooded with so much misinformation that the facts don't actually matter most of the time. Some people will look and say, hey, look, Trump faked his head wound, his ear wound. But they can't quite put that fact in a context to where it makes sense, because that would unravel their entire paradigm. Wait, you mean the news media is not objective? You mean it's pure psyop theater? Like, they're not there yet, if ever. But I guess what our main point here, really what it comes down to, is we had to quarantine and separate from them because the sea of information makes it so that if you haven't figured out how to process the information, you're always going to be reactive and you're going to be puppeteered by these influence agents who are all, proxies for the metascriptors. Like when I say propaganda mules, I mean people who are saying the sky is falling, chemtrails, Bill Gates is blocking out the sun. Like they run around with the current thing, not knowing how much of it is fake. And so the sea of irrelevance is something that was, I think it was Neil Postman talking about Huxley versus 1984, but it's true that there's so much information that there's no objectivity. It's been lost in the mix. And what we're offering here is an objective stance, which is you can only get there by subtracting what you merely believe. So we've created a separation between believers and knowers. Because the way most people approach media, it's as though they're at church. That's why I call it the state church. Media at large is the world state church. There's a world religion. We often make fun of Nasatology, but it's not even a joke. It's part of the religion. And we're just not in it. The nice thing is, it filters itself. So we have the raft, buoyant, and if you're not applying fake until proven real. If you're not applying basic skepticism, you would basically be submerged in the misinformation lines. Have the cards been sent out? The cards are still at the printers. They have to be approved, but I got the approval notice, so they're probably going to be sent out tomorrow. I'm supposed to get them by the 4th, and I'm thinking here, well, you'll get them. I'll be adding a 13th card. And I use the template from Magic the Gathering. So if you're not familiar, the PSYOP trading cards are going to be released 12 at a time. And I want to keep them current. So if there's any current PSYOPs happening this month, we'll put them on cards. But the collection's going to build up. I'll be releasing them in sets of 12, and then I'll be selling them individually. I'd like to put them through Amazon as well as eBay, but we'll see. Definitely eBay. But Amazon is possible if I assign them UPCs. See, Tom Winoy says, Bill Gates vows to give away 99% of his staggering $113 billion fortune. See, he never got into the space race, but he got into the inner space. Like the whole thing about controlling inner space is kind of interesting here. I talk about how the space program isn't really outer space, but it's about worldview and controlling your inner space, your mind, and that the space part of it is just one aspect of the media fakery. But then there's the other part where they're battling for your inner space, as in the vax thing was really about acquiescing to the worldview promulgated by the mainstream. I consider it to be a Eucharist in a sense. I called it before a blood pact with the state. The little prick on the arm, a little bit of blood, a little bit of pain. I think they do that in Wicca ceremonies when you get into the covens, but it's actually a common thing. And I look at it as a Eucharist into this church of world state media, because once you're in, you're just basically saying, yeah, I believe what the priesthood says, that this is the path to salvation, and everybody who rejects it and doesn't believe the news is a godless, dirty heathen, and we got to stay away from them because they will contaminate our purity. So you have these purity wars, saved versus unsaved, saved designated by the state, but then those who reject the salvation and reject the state church believe that they're pure by nature, and they're all about the herd immunity, nature, and alternative things, not trusting the state. That was an intentional dialectic they set up. The anti-position is controlled. The pro-position is controlled by the same hands. And I saw it through this early, but I'm looking back at it, noting how it mirrors other areas as well. Like I've noticed that the Trutherville attitude towards media, it mirrors their attitude towards mainstream religion. It's easy to understand why, but it makes me think that alternative religion is just as controlled as mainstream. That's a separate topic mostly. I'm not making any comments about spirituality, but I'm talking about the structure of the worldview monopolies that have been imposed. And right now we live under a monopoly, which I think is the new monotheism. And if you don't believe me that there's a worldview monopoly, ask me why everybody believes we landed on the moon. And yeah, there's a small group of people who have stepped out of this, marginal. But even those who figured out that's fake still believe everything else. So what good does it do? They're still in the program. The number of deprogrammed, as far as I can tell, let me see, we've got 88 people watching. I'm sure there's a few people who are asleep. But it's not that many. All right, let's continue. Here's another movie coming out, The Home, and it has a syringe injecting into an eyeball. So looking at this, I have been pointing out for some time the significance of the Space Needle and the relevance of it to the One World Trade Tower, which looks like a syringe. And, the word syringe derives from the syrinx, the pan pipes, which I think might tie into the whole pandemic and the concept of panic and fear, because ultimately that's what it was about. And the symbol of the needle going into the eye here, I pointed out that this is in the montage on the Elvis movie, where they create the Space Needle out of the International Hotel's 3 columns, and then it goes into the Star Trek Enterprise, and then the camera spins and it goes into an eye, and then it jumps to a needle being injected into Elvis to resurrect him as Space Odyssey's theme is playing. So you got Space Odyssey needle, kind of a Space Needle tie-in here with a Space Needle outside. Now this sounds insane, but then I'm watching that movie Final Destination, and it starts off with a kid throwing a penny off the needle, the Space Needle, and someone had compared it to Itchy and Scratchy, a Simpsons cartoon, where the mouse is throwing a penny off the Space Needle trying to kill the cat. And then he saws the top of the Space Needle off and it goes into the cat's eye. So the needle going into the eye, and then the movie itself, Final Destination, Bloodlines, the main character's name is Iris, another eye reference, and she's blindfolded. And they take off the blindfold, she sees the Space Needle. So what's going on here? The reference to the eyes, the iris. I think it might in some way connect to Siri, which is iris backward. And I think it might tie into I really think it must tie into HAL 9000. Because we can't separate Space Odyssey 2001 from the metascript narrative. It's a foundational. It foreshadows 9/11, for example, but it also foretells the future merging of man with the monolith. And how are they merging us with the dream world, with the monolith, the monotheism I describe? Through our little black screens, but through our eye specifically. It's through your eyes. And so the needle going into the eye here, this reoccurring theme, I think it might refer to, again, HAL 9000 was the AI who controlled the ship. And the movie is about this astronaut who becomes a star child. In other words, becoming a child of the new age is essentially having gone through the movie screen, because that's what the monolith represents. Well, have we not all gone through the movie screen? If you're living in a world in which, according to your representation of the world, your internal maps, nukes are real, dinos are real, planet-killing asteroids are on the way, and everything in 2020, you go down the list. If you believe the mainstream mediated version of events, you have gone through the screen. You have been alchemically processed, as James Downard Shelby describes it. Downard's description of this thing was simply that we're being alchemically processed. And this was, I think, described in the symbol of the corona, the eclipse, the sun, and the moon. If you go into like Jungian symbolism, the moon is the subconscious, the dreaming mind, and the sun is the conscious mind. So you have this merging of the two. And I think this represented how collectively, and this is true, this has happened, mankind has been merged with the screen. Just like you convert with a religion. If you had a theocratic society and everybody was processed with the same book, you would see, yeah, they merged with the book. And in this case, we are a people of the screen. We have been merged with this collective version of events. But the space odyssey makes sense too if you look at space as inner space. The journey not to the outer reaches of the universe, but our journey into the simulation. And again, when I say we're in a simulation, I don't mean literally like in the Mandela effect way. I mean that our internal version of things is filled up with constructs. They add more, they can't subtract. They can't alter reality fundamentally. They can only add to it with your participation. We touched on this the other day, and I want to bring it up once more. That Mexican Navy ship that hit the Brooklyn Bridge, I was thinking about how it had 3 masts that hit the bridge. And the 3 masts made me, I saw the International Hotel, and I was thinking, wait a minute, it's 3 pillars, and the Space Needle is, of course, has these 3 columns. And one of the 2 who died at the event, a 20-year-old naval cadet, was named America. So America died in this boating accident. Strange. And the 3 columns hitting this thing, not quite sure, but again, I think there might be some significance to that. I mean, obviously, there's got to be, you have twin towers. Now it's 3. I don't know. We'll see. And also, another parallel, I think the Space Needle is built by a company called the Pentagram Corporation. So Pentagon, Pentagram. Now, this is something Leo Friend pointed. This is something I was mentioning earlier. The Fantastic Four First Steps official trailer. So the trailer's out. I saw this in the theater. And if you look here, the people are looking up at the sky. And it looks like it looks right now with Elon Musk's rockets blowing up. And think about that. Space junk has become real. Like it was theoretical just a few years ago, but they've made it a common thing where FAA is saying, hey, divert your flight because space junk. Thanks, Elon Musk. They've made space junk a common feature, kind of like a lot of movies leading up to 9/11 featured jet fuel, exploding planes. That was always a thing. Well, stuff falling from the sky, and then Musk's rockets blowing up and his space junk, that's been a recurring theme. It's been recently, it's been building up. And here we have the Fantastic Four. The city is looking at something raining down from above, and then you see the Earth from space going into the dark. So this is just something I said that was right before the Space Needle blows up in the movie that follows that trailer. Busy56 says, I'm watching that new HBO movie by the Succession creator called The Mountainhead. One of the characters is an auto-hoaxer who calls events fake and says, heads don't explode that way. We were talking about this, how it seems like they're trying to get a hold of the auto-hoaxer. Like they want to control this, and they don't right now. I mean, the fact that we used the term was kind of subversive to their ends because they were trying to make this a bad thing. And I was watching this movie called 0 Day with Robert De Niro as this Biden after being ousted, and then his side loses the election. It's basically Biden. So you have Trump deranged De Niro as a Biden-esque character while New York has some terror attack involving cyber attacks or something. And I'm watching this show, and at the very intro, this guy says, oh, it's all fake. All the people in the subways are crisis actors. And then the mob just gets all angry and there's a big fight and a riot because the auto hoaxer called it fake. So they're getting ready. Let me catch up on comments. Van Gogh says, I don't like that movie poster. Oh, the movie poster for Final Destination has the people falling into a skull, which kind of resembled the sailors falling off that boat. Lickety Split says, start your own churches. Joined by Rebel Black. Thanks for joining. The proles are happy, though. Ignorance is bliss, says Van Gogh. Yeah, and I support that. I support bliss. I don't support ignorance, but, the mainstreamers are in a state of ignorant bliss, and I'm like, fine, let them have it. I'm not trying to wake them up. I don't have a woke agenda. And that's what separates what we're doing from Trutherville. Trutherville believes they have woken up, and they have to wake up the blue pillars. And it's fundamentally the same struggle as the left woke types who believe they have to also convert. So if you're trying to convert the masses in the middle, then you're probably controlled opposition, whether you know it or not, to your own interests, because there are no organized movements to wake people up. It's all part of the same. It's like WWE. Does any person ever really win? No. And I mentioned this earlier because of something that was posted, which we'll get into here by Synchro Morpheus. If you're not looking at current events through the lens of WWE kayfabe, you're off your rocker. We'll get to that in a minute. Another trailer, and I want to catch up on your comments. I saw the trailer for this show called Welcome to Derry, a Stephen King. Now, Stephen King, metascriptor. We'll have to do a deep dive. The sequel to The Shining has a baby that predicts 9/11. Anyway, Welcome to Derry. It's about the clown, Pennywise the clown. And on the trailer, it says, Bert the Turtle says duck and cover. And then it's Derry High School. So I'm thinking DHS, Department of Homeland Security. I mean, maybe I'm reaching, but Bert the Turtle, duck and cover, that's a nuke reference. So we have some foreshadowing here. And this movie, the series is set, I think, in 1962. Probably not a coincidence. And by the way, I was in a parking lot this morning, and I look out my window, and I saw a roadrunner hopping by on one foot. I have a video of it up here on Twitter. I hope it's not badly injured. Maybe it'll be fine. But yeah, I've never seen a hopping roadrunner. I've seen coyotes doing this. Weirdly, whenever I see coyotes in town, they're always like limping. I've been told they're faking it to divert attention away from. I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me. Also, they eat cats, so protect your little ones. Unmitigated Mind, thank you for joining. Dr. Bass Ackwards, AI says AI. Ooh, I like that. Yes. Lickety Split says Pete Davidson is unbearable former handler of that anorexic singer Which one? Roxy W, thank you for joining. And Let's Go has just brought 13 blue wrenches. So now what you can do with your blue wrench, and they're made of pure titanium. You just check your front porch, make sure no porch pirates come by. Get your wrench, and then go to the posts, and you can access the Discord server. Rebel Black says, that's so weird, America died, rip. Yeah, and also the ship. So what I pointed out with the Final Destination is that in the scene where the Space Needle is being destroyed, you're seeing a few things. You're seeing 9/11 happening from within a tower, one of the Twin Towers. You're seeing the jumpers. And the first movie has the plane deaths from inside the plane. So it's bookended. Final Destination 1 to the most recent one, 9/11 in the towers, 9/11 in the planes. But then in the Space Needle itself, it begins to rock, and wine bottles and a piano slide across the floor. And I'm thinking, this is Titanic. This is a Titanic reference overlapping here. And if you look at directors like James Cameron, who directed the Titanic, he also had 9/11 foreshadowing in Terminator 2 and in the Titanic itself, which splits in two and sinks separately, has jumpers. And on 9/11, he was at the scene of the sunken Titanic. So I pointed out that Final Destination has 9/11 and the Titanic kind of built into it. When the boat with the three columns hits the bridge and America dies, I'm thinking, okay, that's like the Space Needle, but it's also a ship. And the symbol of the Titanic, as, of course, America, the West, sinking, is sort of implied here. Rebel Black says, so is X the free speech platform for the right and TikTok for the left, polar opposites? Okay, I wasn't sure how that was going to work out. I remember it was, that could probably be it. They kind of do direct the flows that way. And Twitter has become, like Blue Sky's for the left, Twitter's for the right, but I don't know if Blue Sky actually does it. Does anybody use Blue Sky? I have some bots there, but Copaesthetic says, don't forget the 2013 Russian fake meteor event. That was a test. They've been planning meteor space junk events for a long time. And, there's a Russian satellite on the loose. They say it's a dummy nuke, but it's there. Francis Ford Coppola's movie, Megalopolis, opens up with a Russian satellite. If you look at the trailer, a Russian satellite hitting New York, a 9/11-like event. And then on the day that the movie was in these film festivals, the Cannes Film Festival, I think, the movie was being premiered. And in the news, a Russian satellite had exploded into 100 pieces. And the ISS had to go under duck and cover, basically. So they've been aligning this theme for some time, and Russia is consistently mentioned. And on January 19th of 2024, they released that horrible movie ISS, and it was about Russia and America fighting over control of the space station. And it gets pretty bloody, and it's terrible. And I think I ruined the movie because I had said, hey, look, they're making an ISS movie, watch the hair. If they make the hair on these astronauts better than it is on the ISS, it's going to provide easy fodder for those of us who are critical of the ISS. And I expected that would be the case, and it turns out when the movie came out, not one loose hair. Like, unlike in real life, in the movies, all the astronauts have their hair tied back in these really tight buns, no loose hairs. Why is that? Can't they just CGI hair swimming around? What was with that? Why were they so... And then the way that they floated around in that movie ISS, it was bad. It was like they made it intentionally worse than the real space station. Joined by Mercedes, thank you for joining. Dominic says, once you go woke, soon you'll be broke. I've heard that. Annoying. I hate to use mainstream terminology here. I hate having to delve into it, but we describe the political horseshoe here for a reason. Because I'm not trying to tell people what to believe. I'm just observing this is what the majority believe, big picture-wise. On the fringes, left and right, this is what they believe. And the more I observe, the more I realize that the political horseshoe theory is actually the model they implemented, where if you arrive at certain conclusions, you are going to become this at the extremes. And I've asked people for years, what's the difference between a Proud Boy and a Soy Boy Antifa? Nothing. They're just both fighting for favor from daddy government. Arrested development on both sides. Soy Boy, Proud Boy, why would you stand by that? But you look at their costumes. Patriot Front Proud Boys are indistinguishable from Antifas. And I'm not saying that one side is better than the other. I'm saying they're equally brainwashed. And even if you have good intentions, it doesn't matter. Your intentions don't matter if you're lined up by a bunch of controlled opposition agents. And if there's some agents or some individuals out there that you think are legit and aren't controlled opposition puppets, point them out. I would like to know. Because if you follow these various individuals, you'll see that, no, they're actually propaganda vectors with vested interests, and they're all tightly controlled. They're unable to cross certain lines. So they give you the appearance of being free thinkers or telling the truth about something and breaking some news. But like Project Veritas is such a LARP. I had I guess it was naive. I had faith in Project Veritas until 2020. I thought they're going to blow this thing up, but no. And now I realize, no, it's always just performance art, performative journalism. Joined by Lean Dion. Rebel Black says, Godzilla movie and TV shows have been auto-hoaxing. I'll have to see. I haven't followed up with that. Godzilla was born on November the 3rd. And I think it was 1946. The significance of that, of course, it connects with this growing body of symbols that tie in the nuke to this submarine. Also the Kraken symbolism. There's quite a lot there, but Godzilla was actually designed to be the nuke. And it's a fascinating thing when you look at the Barbieheimer. The summer of Barbieheimer. You had, Barbie and the Oppenheimer, and then Godzilla comes out, Godzilla -1. And these movies are all very much connected in their messaging. In fact, the Paris Olympics had this big theme with nukes. and it opened up with a band called Gojira, which means Godzilla, and the opening scene had, I think it was Marie Antoinette's severed head, but it had the Statue of Liberty kind of destroyed. And if you remember, Tom Cruise rappelled 42 meters in front of everybody. This stuff is all ritualistic and symbolic, and it's worth unpacking. But one of the reoccurring themes has been post-nuke apocalypse, destroyed Statue of Liberty. Even Megalopolis has in its trailer the Statue of Liberty, even reflecting the incoming falling Russian satellite. Oh yeah, we'll talk about that. The Boulder terror attack. Some guy was walking around setting people on fire, and it was at a Civil War memorial park on Pearl Street. So I'm like, maybe a callback to Pearl Harbor, Civil War. And Synchromorpheus had noted that the guy looks like Cody Rhodes from WWE, which is another rabbit trail we'll go down here shortly. Pariah says, have you seen Google VO? Oh, yes. I'm going to use it to produce a lengthy cartoon based on a graphic novel that I had been working on regarding the penguins having the singularity, the technological singularity. I've actually created some videos with it, and I've been posting it. So if you go to ips.monster, in fact, I have this graphic of, and I'll probably come across some of them here in my feed, but I have a graphic of a boombox and the words infinite plane radio unfolding. And it's one of these effects that you would generally have to get like a render forest prefabricated template. But I've been using VEO to create stuff like that. So basically, if you go to my newsletters, sorry, I'm just apparently very prolific here on my Minds account. But if you scroll down far enough, or if you go into the newsletters, you'll see I've been working with it, and I'm very impressed with it. In fact, one of the ways that I generate prompts for the Google VEO to get the most out of it, I think this is one, is I come up with a prompt, and then I take it over to Grok. Like, here's one here. This was made with Google VEO. It's about 9 or 10 penguins jumping out of a coffee cup. So every morning I go to Twitter, and I post, good morning, disease X. And I would generally have some AI-generated penguin drinking coffee. But in this case, this is obviously would require a very complicated prompt if you look at the shadows, the lighting, the steam. So I took my 2-sentence prompt, and I took it to Grok. And I said, please elaborate on this. And it gave me like 500 words, and I kind of trimmed it down, and I gave it to Google VEO. And 10 seconds later, I have this. But I've been working on it. What's up, Bart Dimberton? Thank you for joining. Thrustazar says birds are real. It's news to me. Somebody look into that. Let's Go says, how do you gift memberships? It's kind of like sending a super chat. Or no, I think you go to the main channel, go to infiniteplane.live, and I think you've just, the join button, you can gift memberships, or you do it. No, I believe it has to be done in the chat. I correct myself. Regardless, if somebody gifts you a chat, you have access to the Discord server, and I just installed the stenographer bot, so you want to check that out. Blap Blap says, I'm here for my nightly deprogram. Unmitigated Mind says, does Elon Musk's character arc include meth psychosis, or is he going off script with that? Yeah, the ketamine, the drugs. I've been thinking about this. Where does this fit in? Where does this fit in? This drugged aspect. So we understand that he's got Werner von Braun in his DNA. He's the Elon in that book von Braun wrote, but he also kind of acts like von Braun. He's got that Tony Stark attached to him, but I would also add maybe Jack Parsons. So Jack Parsons was considered to be the American equivalent of Crowley within the OTO structure, the Ordo Templar Orientis. And one of their primary tenets is drugs, basically. Drugs. Strange Wines and Drugs, A Diary of a Drug Fiend. So their path to enlightenment involved inebriation and altered states of consciousness. So I thought, well, maybe that could be it. I know he's got that Gene Wilder thing, but I don't know if Willy Wonka was a drug addict. He was just a candy man. But no, I'm leaning towards that's his Jack Parsons aspect. I don't think he's really drugged up. I'd like to think it's an act. I mean, he shows up at the White House with a black eye, standing next to a bust of Abraham Lincoln, whose head is like looking down for some reason. And then Trump is right there. And behind him is a statue of the Marines raising the flag, which is the inspiration for one of the propaganda shots they took in Butler. So it's a callback to Butler, Lincoln, head down, and Musk being questioned about his black eye. And I thought, what is going on here? Annette says, did you catch the news 4 days ago? Trump was asked if he thought Putin wanted to end the war, and he said, I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in 2 weeks, which falls on June 11th. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Trump says Putin has gone, quote, absolutely crazy and warns of the downfall of Russia. And he did say 2 weeks. Now, these numbers matter, these dates, script-wise. If you didn't catch this, James Comey was walking down the beach, and he found a bunch of shells that spelled out 8647, which was taken to be a threat, 8647. And the Secret Service actually went and interrogated him over this. So it was a clear symbol. And for him to claim ignorance is ridiculous. You know, James Comey writes thriller novels. And in one of them, it had the theme of stochastic violence taking out right-wingers by putting these messages out there. And that's exactly how this thing should be interpreted. Stochastic violence. But not only do you have James Comey writing a book referencing this exact type of thing, but 8647 was put on his Instagram 8,647 days after 9/11/2001. I knew I was keeping count for a reason. No, someone found that. I was like, wow. But that tells you it's obviously not an accident, not a coincidence. Copacetic says we need to use woke right. Yeah, woke right is kind of this thing. It's turning ugly. If you've been following, there's a schism, which I don't think is unhealthy. And I've been pointing out how the red pill has this element of being similar to the left, the enlightened, the awakened ones, the woke, who have experienced a change in consciousness where the original use of the term means you're class conscious now. Now you see the structural inequalities, you see the class war, now you're awake. So now everything you perceive goes through that lens. That's what it means to be woke. And that term has been around for like 100 years. Since the 30s anyway. But it's been kind of used by the red pillars. Like you take the red pill, now you see the Matrix. Now you see the chemtrails and Bill Gates and the depopulation agenda and the false flags. So you have this different set of awakenings, and the red pill kind of cloaks this with they kind of dog whistle it. They don't say it outright, but they say globalist, they say George Soros. Alex Jones will never say it directly, but their entire framework is scapegoating a certain ethnic group and a certain nation, a country, just like the wokes are focusing on whiteness and anti-white racism. And so these are mirrors. But I'm saying is that you could accuse the red pillars of being woke in that sense. And funnily enough, the internal conversation within the right media ecosystem is starting to outgroup the anti-Israel people as woke right. And it's I don't know, it's not really sitting too well with very many people. I'm not taking sides. My only interest in this is pointing out the existence of the political horseshoe as a model built intrinsic to the world stage. Okay, let's continuing. Go to the comments here. I want to make sure we don't miss anything. 5G Trevor says, want to try? Yeah, if you want to try Grok, I recommend it. I have an ebook I wrote on doing short fiction with it. But Grok can do pretty much anything, but the images are improving. It's not that great with spelling, but I happen to like the misspellings. Like, it's not going to last forever. We're in this period where these things are still learning, and they're not perfect yet, and so we should enjoy it while it lasts, because at some point it's going to be perfect. What's up, Osher? Thanks for joining. 5G Trevor says, maybe show us making something start to finish. That sounds like a good idea. I could definitely do a Zoom conference, and we could do something. Test out different things, especially the video stuff. I've been already working on creating a video out of this graphic novel script, and it was just taking forever. And I decided I'm going to use Google VEO instead. The same amount of work to create a graphic novel could create I'm not going to say it's as good as, but visually it's comparable to some of these stop motion animations of like Tim Burton. I mean, it's really incredible. A lot of people are still AI phobic. I don't get it. I guess I do, but it's too late. It's like, what are you going to do? You know, if you're complaining that authors are using AI, then I don't want to see you reading a book unless it's by candlelight and it's handwritten with a quill pen on parchment. First draft. If it's been through a word processor, you have no right to read it if you're against AI. Like, you're either on the side of technology or you're not. There's no hitting the brakes here. Thank you, 5G Trevor. He has brought 5 new wrenches. So Joe Mama, David Hazel, Haystack Sniper, and Michael Jones have all received the blue wrench. Rebel Black says, in the new Superman, he gets arrested. Like, he's the ultimate illegal alien. In the previous one, he was quarantined. And he said, I've been walking around for 33 years and I'm perfectly healthy. And they said, exactly. Which was foreshadowing the asymptomatic super spreader as the ultimate threat. The healthier you are, the more of a threat you are. So the healthier you are as an individual, the unhealthier you are, the bigger a risk you are to the collective. And they set up that dynamic where Superman is the healthiest of all because he's Superman. So they had to quarantine him because he might have some alien viruses that he was immune to. But this premise of the asymptomatic super spreader being a real threat because some people have weak immune systems, it's not hard to understand. And they really emphasize that because they knew the plan was, the script was in the future, they were going to get us to accept the same framework with the mind virus. That's why I consistently reference disease X. The mind virus is the information that causes people to become dangerous to society, to the collective. And the people who are the most dangerous are those of us who are able to traffic in this dangerous information, but who don't catch the mind viruses because we have functioning immune systems. So we can talk about any conspiracy theory without automatically believing it, so we don't get radicalized. So again, we have functioning mental immune systems. But the general public has been conditioned to switch it off when it comes to news media. As I say, they have maids. The government gave them mind aids, made them susceptible to manipulation this way. And their arguments when it comes to shutting down the internet is going to be disease X, and X is going to be pointed as the main vector of this. The madness references. What is the madness? What is disease X? It's the ideas that are unsafe for the collective, that you may be safe as an individual trafficking in these things because you have a functioning immune system, but the mentally ill can be radicalized. And who has been blamed more than anyone else for every single terror attack? From the beginning. There's always one side saying it's ideology, the other side saying it's mental illness. Oh, it was because of his religion, Islam. No, it's because he was mentally ill. It's because of gun culture. No, it's because of SSRIs. Like, there's always this back and forth, but they've always accepted the idea that mentally ill equals dangerous. CMGZ510, thanks for joining. Andrea says there's a full moon on June 11th. Yeah, someone pointed out it's a full moon on June 11th, and in Final Destination, they're playing the song Bad Moon Rising. when the Space Needle's opening up. And that's an intentional reference that was placed there, even though it's a contradiction to the real timeline, because that song came out in 1969 and the scene is 1968. So I thought there's got to be an intention behind Bad Moon Rising and associating with the Space Needle. And as we said before, the movie is about the opening night of the Space Needle. And last week, the Space Needle had opening night for the Skyliner. So you got Skyview opening night, Skyliner opening night, movie, real life, lots of overlap. Oh, thank you for the info. Let's Go says you cannot gift off of the app. I hope YouTube's listening. What's up, F.E. Gardner? Thanks for joining. Roxy W says AI has no place in creating. AI, to the contrary, has made it possible for people with no creative talent or skills to enter the playing field. I happen to like the idea that people, like, I know someone who is working on a project and just didn't have the funding and was tired of working with artists trying to get all these illustrations done. And I'm like, well, here's how you use Dolly. 2 days later has a publishable manuscript. Now, you could just say that's cheating, but I'm like, well, if that wasn't available because artists are expensive, the old-fashioned route, hiring somebody, outsourcing and all that, the work wouldn't have come out. So in a way, I think it's a leveling of the playing field, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing that people with creative visions and ideas who don't have the time to hone those skills can actually enter the market competitively. I don't think it's bad. I know a lot of bad content does come out of it, but still the better stuff rises to the top. And I think also another thing to consider too is if AI makes everybody functionally just a little bit smarter, it's a net gain for everybody. What benefit? I mean, we're dealing with billions of ignorant people, and we're talking about the programmed ignorances, the deliberate misinformation, the hyperstitions, the Truman Show that we're in. But we have before us, the information age. We have the tools to learn anything and get information, and AI just lets you get information better and faster. I was trying to learn Python when my internet was down a couple weeks ago. I had like 10 days where I wasn't on, and I was trying to learn it, and I'm like, this is challenging, and it's going to take me 6 to 8 months to figure this out so I can set my bots loose. And then I started using Grok. I'm like, Grok, how do I do this? Grok, check this code and fix it. And in less than a day, I made a bot that would have taken me many, many months if I didn't have AI. So I don't see the problem with it. I don't think that it's a problem any more than, here, the only thing is this. It's not going to be anything other than a reflection of the mainstream in terms of what it says and what it does. Like, it's the AI exists in the box. I mean, that much is true. What's up, Critterfest Sanctuary? Says hello, Tim, and everybody on board the auto hoax train. Now, it is true that it is shaking things up. And that's another thing, too. What we're doing specifically is disruptive. We're talking about marketplace disruptions. The way people get their information is changing. And what we're doing is also a disruption, because you have the traditional model of media, mainstream, alternative, fringe, conspiracy. And you can Venn diagram and see where these things overlap. And the alternative to the mainstream is, pretty much a closed information of ideas. But what makes them the same is that they're both passive. Alternative and mainstream are passively consuming propaganda from their chosen outlets. What we're doing, as I call the third branch of media, the parallel media, is we're taking an active approach, examining it critically, suspending judgment on belief and analyzing the available facts, and not believing. We're fomenting a culture of disbelief, choosing informed non-belief over low information belief. And that's a very disruptive thing, and that's why we want to make it bigger. We want to get more minds on the off-world stage. And there's a lot of people who are in Trutherville who are opposed to that, who are mad at us because we don't believe this or that, and that's fine. You're always going to have the bitter clingers to the old paradigm. And I'm just saying that the AI thing is there. It's going to be a factor in everything. Might as well get ahead of it. And next says, I find it interesting that people don't even know where inspiration and creativity come from, but feel defensive now that AI is standing to replace them. Well, here's an example. I was working on a manuscript, and let's say it's like 50,000 words. And if I wanted somebody to read it and review it, like most people wouldn't, but you need that objective person, objective viewpoint to read your book, like an editor. And editors are expensive. So now if you don't have the money to hire an editor, you may not have the ability to enter the marketplace. And AI has created a level playing field for that as well, where you could take your manuscript and you can say, review this for readability, marketability to these target demographics and make suggestions. And it will go through and it will do everything that you would have to pay a lot of money to a professional editor if they accepted you as an author. So this takes down that gate. You don't need to be accepted to a publishing company to have access to the world's best editors. No, you just have Grok. And Grok will take a sizable chunk of text and spit out a response in seconds. And you can tell it even be brutal. Like it'll be constructive in its criticism, but my point is the job of the editor is, moribund as many other jobs are because of AI once people figure out how to use it. Lickety Split says, let's see somebody defend auto-tune. It's god awful, come on. Yeah, didn't Travis Scott kill those people with auto-tune at Astro World? Rebel Black says, auto hoaxers are peaceful, but mainstream will demonize us. Remember the Batman cartoon? Yeah, they're going to try to say the people who call news fake are terrorists, basically. I mean, they have been working on that angle. And I don't know. They're going to make you seem crazy. First, they laugh at you. Then they attack you. Then they accept what you're saying. That's not going to happen. They're going to laugh. They're going to attack. They're going to ignore. I was worried that they're going to infiltrate our group, get somebody associated with us to do something crazy, and then burn the whole thing down. But it's too late for that. They did that with Flat Earth. They did that with, I think they do this quite frequently, where it's kind of like they put discrediting or self-discrediting operatives or ideas in these different groups, but they can't touch this and co-opt it. Like you would never have a Stu Peters or a Candace Owens even utter the phrase, media fakery. Sure, she'll talk about fake moon landings, but she's not going to talk about completely simulated events on the scale that we do. And the reason why they can't is because we're right. Like, never forget, we are correct here. This isn't conjecture or conspiracy theory. And they can't uncover this because they exist to prevent this from being exposed. The whole purpose of what I call the guardrailers, to keep everybody on the mainstream, they have these people who are there. If you deviate and you question, oh yeah, they'll validate you. Oh, you're right. Mainstream's lying. This is the truth. And they keep you from realizing it's fake. These controlled opposition agents, as I call them, exist solely to hide the fakery. The false flag theory is there to hide fakery. People who say, oh, it's a false flag, some people died. No. You've been given a meme which is designed to keep your mind in their box. So my point is, we are correct in our assessment, and they can't afford to shine a light on it. We can act with impunity. We could do an auto hoax convention and talk about these things openly. And I don't know how they're going to handle it, but they're not going to advocate for this. They're not going to platform it. They're not going to say, hey, why don't you come on and, like Tim Pool, for example, would never have a conversation with somebody calling stuff fake, but he'll bring on, who was that guy? Donnie Darkened, this anonymous troll account who used ChatGPT to write sermons. And he kept saying Trump's the Antichrist. Yeah, Tim Pool had that guy on, but he's not going to have somebody on talking about the systemic fakery, or much less the metascript itself, the purpose of fake news. So we're outside. Actually, we exist out further than their leash can go. Their leash actually stops before they exit the screen, and we're socially distanced from the screen itself. I don't think they're in an enviable position. I couldn't even, I mean, I guess the amount of money, I guess that might be a factor. How much money is Putin putting in Tim Pool's beanie? Like, could I bullshit for a living and speak through a filter that I know is just intrinsically wrong and chock full of propaganda narratives? I don't know. What's up, I suck and dead turtle? Thank you for joining. How many do we have now? 145 people listening. And in about a week, after I get the cards in, I'm going to do some upgrades to the channel. And we'll probably be on several more video platforms, and the live 24/7 radio will be kicking on as well. So all of you who are buying memberships, I have to say thanks, because you're enabling everything that we're doing here. And I'm putting all my time and energy into making things more efficient. So even if I don't have a lot of time, like today, in fact, if you missed it, we were using the voice chats. So another reason to get into Discord, I'm going to be making it a practice to be in the voice chats as I'm heading over to the office, leading up to the live streams, and possibly after. Okay, let's continue through the notes. Space Needle stuff. Okay, so this is a big month. I mean, we've got the 250th anniversary of the military. NASA is shutting down the ISS sighting website on June 11th. What are the odds? And I pointed out a couple of things. In the Space Needle movie, The Final Destination, one of the characters is from the 100, which I won't get into the significance of that and the Space Needle and the $100 million and all that stuff, but their season finale was on 6/11, and the space station exploded. Well, the space station is shutting off its tracking website on June 11th. How do you explain that? Okay. I'm scrolling through my minds.com/infinite plane society where I keep all my receipts. Mega earthquake fears hit Japan, sparked by a comic that predicted 2011 tsunami disaster. The original 3/11. There's a No Kings nationwide day of defiance on Trump's birthday. So on 6/14, there's going to be a No Kings. And when I saw that headline, it reminded me that they were putting Trump as a king consistently, and then Drudge just put him up with a crown of tacos, like corn tortilla shells, because they're calling him taco because it makes him mad. It's an acronym for Trump always chickens out, which isn't true. I mean, he's won 3 elections, or 2, depending on who you ask. But I was noting how even though it's a flippant meme and it's a taco crown, it is true that if you go into the symbolism of the Corn King Osiris and you align it up with the JFK assassination, that it's likely that this might tie into this upcoming Flag Day, No King's Day protest. But it is true that there's some significance to the corn and the crown and the killing of the king as described in The Golden Bow. If you haven't read James Fraser's Golden Bow, this was one of the things that King Kill 33 is about. It's about the death of Osiris and how that myth is superimposed over the assassination of JFK, and the JFK stuff, as well as the Lincoln stuff, has been advanced to Trump. So for Trump to have a crown of corn, it's not as crazy as it sounds or as flippant of a meme if we're looking at things through the lens of occult symbolism. Trump posted a meme saying he's on a mission from God, and he had the symbol of Pepe the Frog. And nothing can stop what is coming. So he is going straight to the Q people with this stuff. This is like deep Q lore. I don't know why. I mean, what would be the point? Is he activating them? A lot of them seem to think so. Lord Laney says, I was all about Discord a few years back, and when the feds swarmed the chat trying to leave a paper trail of faux racism and Joker-esque radicalism to portray us as unhinged, I became wary. Yeah, absolutely. There was one day, for some reason, it was just like an influx of Canadian nationalists who were hardcore anti-vax and like Pakistani or something. And I was like, where do these people all come from? Like, here we are talking about fake news. And then I get these people coming in saying, this person killed this person, and it's because of the open borders. And I thought, this has nothing to do with us. This is like right-wing identitarian politics. And then there were others who would try to chastise me for not inciting violence. Like, hey, you're waking people up. Shouldn't we be fighting the government? I'm like, okay. And then we found many articles. You can look this up. Discord, admittedly, has been used as a vector for FBI to hire contractors to spy on people. Taco Trump is trending, says Rebel Black. Yeah, you know what's interesting about the identitarian politics and the racial stuff is that it all happens at once. Like, on the first of this date, all the people who lean right are going to suddenly target this group. Once it was anti-immigrants, and then it was Haitians, Haitian cannibals, Haitians eating cats in Springfield. But it's like the scapegoat of the month club. Every month they have a different enemy that they're going after. But I noticed it's not just the big influencers, and that term influencers, a lot of people hate it. I think they use the term influencer because they're trying to connect it with the idea of mind viruses, like mind flu. You caught their mind virus, their mind influenza. And this connects to the 2017 Economist cover, Chinese Sharp Power, the new shape of Chinese influence, and it had the COVID-looking ball. It was covered in spikes, red where China is, suggesting that the whole thing was going to become red, which would make it a COVID ball. And it said the new shape of Chinese influence. And I'm like, oh, novel shape. Chinese influenza, the Chinese flu. Anyway, The Economist. We got to check out The Economist. There's got to be some recent examples of predictive programming. It's like an oracle at this point. The Economist has been pretty spot on. Same with The Atlantic. I alluded to this earlier. Here's Musk with his black eye. Here's Trump in front of the sculpture of the soldiers raising the flag. And here's Lincoln looking down. Like he's at the theater looking down at the stage. He was hit by his son named X. I don't know if that's a significant thing. But here's what I'm referencing. So behind Trump, you see that sculpture. Now, on 7/13, Trump posed in such a way, surrounded by a Secret Service, that it looked like they were raising a flag. Fight, fight, fight. Let's see here. Sandy Hook, verdict overturned. Yeah, that was all a hoax. The trial was a hoax. Forget about the shooting itself. The Sandy Hook versus Alex Jones trial was a hoax. Complete simulation. Nobody lost any money. Nobody actually cried. Like, nobody's feelings really got hurt because the whole thing was fake. The trial was fake. You can say that, right? I know you can't say the shooting was fake because that's hate speech and misinformation, and it'll get somebody killed. But you could say the trial was fake. Look at this. Global pandemic warnings. Deadly fungus mirrors HBO's The Last of Us. So apparently there's some deadly fungus called aspergillus, a dangerous fungus spreading around due to climate change. So climate change has caused this new thing to spread, and it's just like the movie The Last of Us. So this is an unexplainable, inexplicable coincidence must be the result of a higher than man power. People used to say that. Like all these coincidences with the news and the movies, it has to be higher than man. Man couldn't do this. And I used to scratch my head at this, just like, what are they saying? You're saying that man can, as in the media, can do these massive magic shows that take up entire cities. We're talking simulated events, psychological operations, that they're entirely invested into the mind war, the psi war. They fake put people on the moon. And you're saying that they couldn't synchronize the entertainment with the fake news? They all have the same agenda. So an easier way to frame this so you don't get trapped down that mystified, confused rabbit trail where you only think that a higher than man could explain this without ever defining what higher than man means. It's information propaganda and entertainment propaganda. What's the common denominator? It's got the same source. Okay, we talked about this. Stephen King, It inspired Welcome to Derry, Bert the Turtle reference. And I remember in the movie they kept talking about the blinding lights, which made me think about the flash from the nuke. Again, Bert the Turtle, it's set back in 1962. Okay, now we're getting into some interesting stuff here. I've been waiting to find this. So Synchromorpheus was talking about the Boulder, Colorado terror attack. And look here. I might be off my rocker, but the guy with the shirt off, and this is the guy with the spray bottle who's setting people on fire, looks like Captain Lou Albano. The ring light clothes set led me to think there's a wrestling connection. Okay, so anyway, he also looks like Cody Rhodes. So now we're looking at the terrorist, and he has his shirt off, and he's wearing blue jeans. He's got shades on and dyed blonde short hair. So he looks kind of like Cody Rhodes, superficially, but the connection is there. Not taking the same performance-enhancing drugs. So I looked back, and I was remembering what J.L. had talked about with Cody Rhodes, so I want to revisit this. So if you don't remember this, there was this event in WWE where Cody Rhodes was hit by Travis Scott and The Rock. He had an ear injury and an eye injury. So if you're not familiar with this story, here's some pictures of him. So here's Cody Rhodes, ear injury and eye injury. And we've been talking about this Trump ear wound and how it's meant to be followed by an eye wound and how this had some connection here. So Jurassic Liars called in and he said that, Cody Rhodes was hit by a belt held by The Rock. And the belt, on the back of it says Cody's Soul. And it has the date 6/11 on it. So the Cody's Soul is a championship-style belt unveiled by The Rock during his feud with Cody Rhodes. This was in March. It became a central symbol in their storyline. Key features. It's not an official WWE Championship belt, but it was designed by The Rock to taunt this guy. It is emblazoned with the words Cody's Soul. But now the strange part here is it has the date of Cody's father's death. So it says here, June 11th, 2015. So now trying to put this all together, he gets hit with the belt that has 6/11 on it. Trump was shot at 6:11 p.m. and the date 6/11 has been consistently attached to all of this stuff. So now I'm looking at this Cody Rhodes character in a suit. And I'm not saying he looks like Trump, but there's a certain archetype here, covered in blood here. He looks like Trump or the Homelander, for example. But here he is with an eye wound, a black eye, and they said he had a busted eardrum. But the ear-eye wounds and the 6/11 just seems a little too much to be coincidence. This is a mirroring of, apparently, of Butler in some symbolic way. Another thing here, The Rock, as has been pointed out by Jurassic Liars, is heavily associated with Elvis. And the significance here then, here you have The Rock with the belt that says 611 on it, with the Trump-like guy, or this Cody Rhodes guy rather, on the ground with his busted ear, the black eye. So again, WWE has consistently been used as a propaganda vector for predictive programming. 9/11 in particular, as many of you recall, the Twin Towers. Yeah, I could take calls tonight. Absolutely. I'll open up phones here. How long have we been? We've been live here for about an hour. Okay. All right, these are just a few of the trails that we have gone through. So if you go into the Discord server, you'll see a lot of our research. You can participate, and every few hours it will self-publish. Well, the bot will be publishing a breakdown of the last 4 hours. Oh, by the way, we've been talking about Palestine, Ohio. The significance of it. Palestine, Ohio had a train derailment and a, quote, toxic airborne event. And it looked like a big mushroom cloud. And it was followed, rather, it followed a Netflix movie called White Noise with Adam Driver. Adam Driver is then the face of White Noise, toxic airborne event, very nuke-like situation. He's also the face of Megalopolis. He plays Caesar, a Trump-like character who gets shot in the eye. And then he miraculously recovers. So we have that element. But then the other element is the real-life train derailment in East Palestine that was mirrored in the White Noise movie. The actors from the movie had to evacuate from the real thing. So this is a hoax that we've already talked about for various reasons, but it's in the news again because 2 years after now, here's what the story is. BlackRock is among several entities named in a lawsuit filed by East Palestine train derailment victims. So imagine that. You're in a movie about a train derailment and a big blackout and suggestions of an EMP or a nuke. And then in real life it happens because you acted in the movie as an extra nearby, and then it happens. And now you get to sue BlackRock over it. But anyway, they're suing. The suit alleges a coordinated effort to block medical care for those exposed to the toxic chemicals, also named Vanguard. So East Palestine is back in the news. And I'm bringing this up because the storyline was the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment, I think, was suggested it was caused by Trump deregulation, putting profit over people, destroying the environment. So it's a climate change thing. It's essentially suggesting that capitalism is incompatible with good custodianship of the environment. So this is one of these psyops that just will keep on giving. And I remember at the time I said it was fake, right? We actually had one of our reporters go out there. It was a big nothing burger, but it was fake. And I had somebody call in and chastise me and say, how dare you call it fake? People are dying. The rivers are poisoned. What about all the dead fish? And I said, those are crisis acting fish, probably CGI. And I don't care, if people are triggered and mad that I call things fake, because it just reveals that they're emotional and they're believers. But do they know it to be true? No, they're reacting to a nightmare. That's why I say don't wake up the norms, the blue pillars, don't wake them up. They're having a dream. And it's a pleasant dream. It's blissful. If you wake them up and they become woke or red-pilled, what happens? Now they live in a nightmare. And they think they're awake, so they're trying to wake everybody else up. Hey, you got to have this nightmare too. You're blissfully unaware of how bad it really is. It's like they're not doing anybody any favors. Roger Stone said, my great-grandson lives 12 miles from East Palestine, Ohio. He suffers from rashes, fever, diarrhea. Like, I wouldn't want my great-grandfather, if he was around, to blast me on Twitter with all these horrible symptoms. But yeah, apparently his great-grandson is sick because of it. He says what happened was not an accident. Oh, it was not an accident, so it was purposeful. Anyway, that's Roger Stone. I actually said, well, your grandson is a crisis actor because the thing was a hoax. A lot of people in the comments on Twitter couldn't understand that. I'm like, well, wait till you find out about Butler. Wait till you find out about, I mean, fill in the blank. But again, the people who think that it was real, but it was a conspiracy, are what I would call MSM plus. They're in the box. They're just on the far, far fringe of it. The suspect said, okay, so the guy who was there in Boulder setting fire to people, he said, end Zionists. So the anti-Zionists are saying that this guy was a Zionist plant and it's a psyop. That's generally what they will do. Others will say it's real and it's a reflection of some really bad sentiment. We have to censor the internet because of this. And then we had those two others who were shot recently by a pro-Palestine person. Was it Greta? No. But Greta is in the news for her activism. She's moved on from climate change to stopping Israel, and some people are commenting on it, and others are saying, well, no, it's the same issue. And if you think about it, that it is. When you look at how these things are boxed together, the West needs to go because of its destruction, its destructive influence on the collective. But like, look at, for example, I Can't Breathe. I Can't Breathe wasn't just the slogan of the poor being oppressed and they can't breathe because the knee of the system is on them. But it's also the environment can't breathe because the pollution specifically caused by capitalism, the West, the rich. So the story here, it's all interconnected. The West has to go. Obama was in the news and he slipped. He slipped again. And this all goes back to Donald Trump entering the world stage as a politician, pandering to the Tea Party when he said that Barack Obama was born in Kenya. The birther movement. Donald Trump got his start with that. Well, here's Trump talking about being born in Kenya. I'm sorry, this is Obama talking about how he was born in Kenya. Now, I'm sure he's just misspeaking. I do this all the time. I mistakenly mentioned that I was born in Argentina. Sometimes I say China. It happens, right? You just accidentally name the wrong country. Come on.
Years ago, I visited Kenya as the first sitting American president to come from Kenya.
And they clap. The SEALs clap. The first sitting American president to come from Kenya. Now, is this AI? I don't think so. He just obviously misspoke, like as we do, as one does. Who here hasn't misattributed some other country to the place of your origin? Who hasn't said, "Oh yeah, I'm from Ireland"? Like, no, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sorry, but I'm not a birther. Okay, BlackRock being sued. There's that. Okay, here's another thing I want to share. This was from Trump's Truth Social. Trump shared a tweet. So he's been sharing a lot of QAnon content. He shared this one where he says that Joe Biden's dead. Yep. He said there is no Joe Biden executed in 2020. Biden clones, doubles, and robotic engineered soulless, mindless entities are what you see. So some kind of a bio-android is what they're saying here. There is no Joe Biden. Now, I don't know if I can take calls. My internet has not been the best tonight. I'm going to hire a professional here locally to fix up my whole system. In fact, that's my next thing. The next agenda here. We've got bots. We have PSYOP trading cards. We have a tabloid ready to go. We have a Discord server. We're about to go 24/7. But before I go 24/7, I need to fix all the bugs. I need to have the exterminator come in here and deal with all the gremlins. And I'm searching online locally for somebody who could perhaps come to the office and optimize everything, make recommendations, because I've seen some streamers doing some amazing things, and I used to be able to do more. And it's not the computer, it's new. It's settings and other things. And I've asked ChatGPT and I've had some suggestions, but I want to make everything not just function smoother, but I want the setup to be a bit more professional. So that's the next thing. So we'll be working on that in the next few days. I will make that happen. Once I have the cards in at the end of the week, my focus is going to be bots and turning on the 24/7 live stream. And of course, we used to have like 500 people in the Discord server. So it's not just going to be some room where you can find some cool links that have been spammed there, but rather it's an active, vibrant community with a voice chat and people talking, discussing things. And if you can't be there for a voice chat, there's transcripts, and the bot, the think tank stenographer, will be providing succinct breakdowns with quotes, and you'll be able to look at the infographic and see where we're at. Lord Laney says he also says Michael in several places. I've heard that one, but I can't make sense of it. Because if true, the name Michael wouldn't have been used in decades. So it wouldn't have been it wouldn't be interchangeable. Michael Michelle, it wouldn't be. But the Kenya thing, he slipped on that a few times, and his Kenyan brother used to kind of grift with the right wing, and he used to say that it's true. It wouldn't shock me. But it also points out something else. There's been this ongoing antagonism between Trump and Obama for a long time. And a lot of it relates to Barack Obama's birth date. And if you remember, Jurassic Liars has long said that the date 8/4 for the head wound is it's some kind of a birthday present for Barack Obama. Kind of like, wasn't it the comedian Joan Rivers died on Beyonce's birthday? And some suggested it was a birthday present for something she had said. I mean, very ominous, dark stuff, dark subtext, if true. Even if not true, it's kind of a dark storyline. But the idea that it would happen on Barack's birthday is, and the code is deep. You know, August 4th, the 216th day of the year, 216, very, very interesting number when you break it down. But the idea here, the irony of it, consider the irony of this. These two individuals are antagonistic to each other, 1776 versus 1619. Trump rises politically the Tea Party by calling out the other guy as a fraud. You have these two conflicting visions of America. The radically transformed progressive vision of Barack Obama, and Make America Great Again, the traditionalist version offered by Trump. Idealized past, progressive future. So they exist on the world stage as these politicians, but they also embody something. The idea that Trump's first attack against Obama was about his legitimacy and going after his birth certificate is extremely personal. So for Trump to get it on 8/4 would be like poetic justice. The whole birther thing in 8/4. So just another element there. And recently, Trump moved Obama's portrait in the White House and put a portrait of himself where he had the bloody head wound in Butler on 7/13, which you could look at it as you missed. So if you look at the subtext here, and look, we're looking at history. They're not making it up as they go. The story's already been written. And it's being written in such a way, I think, that it contains all the elements of good literature, including various subtexts, various subplots. And one of the subplots here has been this Barack versus Trump with the subtext of 1619 versus 1776. And I said this before Leave the World Behind came out. A Higher Ground production, Obama's put it out. And that movie has encoded into it the 1619 project clashing with 1776. All right, let me go through your comments. Vague says, Dr. Fauci is Ellen's mom. You know, I've seen them side by side, and at one point I entertained the possibility that Fauci was Ellen in one of these hyper-realistic masks. I mean, it's an interesting area. when you look into these masks and what is possible. Like, have you seen Christian Bale as Dick Cheney in the movie Vice? I mean, they're indistinguishable. It looks just like him. In fact, I think it was mentioned, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence, that they're exactly 33 years apart to the day. Dick Cheney and Christian Bale. And after seeing that, for some reason, I was fixated on this idea that Mike Pence was just Christian Bale in a mask because of their overlapping facial expressions and demeanors so close if you do side-by-sides. But you can't verify these things. So it's kind of a lost cause to try to figure out who's wearing a mask and who isn't, because they've already transitioned into digital deepfakes. But it's useful to know because the existence of hyper-realistic masks and deepfakery goes back for many decades. So deepfakes aren't coming. We're not getting deepfake now that it's 2025 and AI is out. No, we were born deepfaked, and there's no way to know how deep. We don't have that information. Tim says, NX, look at the CSS color code for Thistle. The code is 216, 191-216. In my research, I found it's extremely has occult significance as the most powerful pre-antidote. Well, 216, according to the Pythagoras, it is the phoenix cycle, the number of years between incarnations. So phoenix, you have the symbol of death and rebirth. And phoenix is also a symbol that was synonymous with Christ. So the phoenix is a Christ symbol. And so you have that. You could also add to it the Burning Man. The idea of the phoenix setting itself on fire, rising from the ashes, has been consistently correlated with this Burning Man symbolism, which is interesting for a lot of reasons. We've been looking at, like, the guy that set himself on fire outside the Trump trial on 4/19, the anniversary of Waco. But again, the phoenix cycle. And then it's also 6 cubed, so 6 times 6 times 6. But other ways that this has kind of come up, you have the number 216. The Weeknd was born on 216. And he shows up at the Music Awards on November 22nd. Was it 2020? Or 2022, but on JFK's death date with a head wound, like a bloody head thing. And it's like, what the hell is that? But his 216, his name is Abel. So Cain and Abel, head wounds encoded into it. Abe L, the Lincoln head wound thing, the JFK date. So the 216 would also kind of, you could also see this in B and P, like the second letter and the 16th. So Brock Purdy comes out, the quarterback, and they're like, hey, he looks just like Lee Harvey Oswald. And so you have this Lee Harvey Oswald connected with that, and I thought that's interesting. So later I'm watching Fallout, and Betty Pearson, who has this Kamala-like role in stealing the election from Vault 33, and they're wiping off the blood, cleaning up the evidence of a massacre, and there's only one drop of blood left in the entire room. And it's on a foosball character that looks like Trump on the right side of his head. And of course, that was orchestrated by BP, another 216 code. And this is before Trump was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, BP. So that's just one example of how consistent these things are. And the 216 thing, very consistent. Jurassic Liars, though, is the place to go if you want to go. He's got these note cards. Honestly, he ought to put all of his note cards, his index cards, into a PDF. You know, I know he's not doing it for money, but I mean, it's publishable. He ought to put it in that format just to distribute it, because there are relationships between these dates and these numbers that are irrefutable. That I could say it, but it helps to actually see it. I mean, some of these things are kind of easy to decode or pretty, blatant and obvious, like the 4547 on the hat, making a 911. Not hard to decode, but others are far more intricate. Highly suggestive of deep, deep planning. I mean, we've talked about this before. Kyle Rittenhouse, Greta Thunberg, born the same day. The shooter of Reagan, born on JFK's birthday. But this is a deep pattern. Again, Mark Ruffalo plays a Trump-esque character, gets shot. He's got JFK's birthday, death day as his birthday. By the way, speaking of, JFK's birthday was on the 29th of May. That was the date. And 2 months before JFK was shot, as in September 22nd, 1963, you know what he was doing? He was on vacation with Jackie. Jackie was into spy thrillers. Jackie was into movies, movie making. They were on vacation, and Vanity Fair covered this. Before any JFK files were leaked, which didn't tell us anything, back in late 2024, some investigator from a reporter from Vanity Fair got some video clips, and he hasn't shared it yet. But she made a 16-minute video, a home movie, while they're on vacation. And the movie has JFK getting killed, getting shot. He's on the ground, apparently covered in Heinz 57, and the Secret Service are playing along. And I seen some still shots from it. He posted it in the article. And one of the shots looks like the Ford Lincoln down there from the angle of the Zapruder film. Why haven't they released it? I have a few reasons, I think, maybe. I mean, think about this. The significance of it to me is they knew they were going to fake this event. It's a big joke. It's funny. She can't wait to take part. She's going to pull the wire on the dummy that blows up the squib. So Jackie was happy about it. So 2 months before the Secret Service, Jackie and JFK are making a violent home movie where he dies. And one of the Secret Service agents who was there was actually in the security detail 2 months later. Lickety Split says Obama roasting Trump. Great vid about Trump-Obama thing, coronation of the Lion King. I'll look into that. Lion King is based on, isn't it based on Macbeth? And I know that JFK has, there's some Macbeth stuff tied into the JFK assassination storylines. If you look at King Kill 33, which is interesting because I think they even had Macbeth performed at the White House before he was shot. So there's layers to these stories, but I was talking about JFK's birthday, 5/29. The Trinity nuke was detonated at 5:29 a.m. on 7/16. 7/16 is JFK Jr.'s death day, by the way. And 7/16 is when the Apollo 11 left from Cape Kennedy. Penguinotti says, Curse of Cain is the title of a book about John Wilkes Booth. Ties to Abe L. and Abel. Oh, interesting. Curse of Cain. Abel, Abe L. Nice finds. So, back to what I brought up with the Captain America movie trailer that came out on 7/12, and it had Harrison Ford getting shot at as president, and it kind of mirrored what happened with Trump. That happened in a theater. So I'm thinking Ford Theater. So there's an Abraham Lincoln connection here, getting shot at in the theater. And again, it happened as Trump was getting shot, so there's that link. He becomes the Red Hulk, which I think is Trump, MAGA, final form. Another President Hulk connection. Mark Ruffalo was the Green Hulk. Concurrent, related symbols. Then after Trump was shot, Hulk Hogan came out and gave the speech. But another thing, Harrison Ford was born on 7/13, the date of the shooting. Also, Julius Caesar's birth date. And Trump is Caesar in Megalopolis, who gets shot in the eye in a failed assassination attempt. Additionally, Julius Caesar in the Park was performed where Trump was Caesar getting stabbed. So you have that connection as well. And when the Captain America was airing in Liberty Theater in Washington, the ceiling collapsed. So another thing in the theater. And also a ceiling collapsed during a viewing of Final Destination. Again, probably fake and staged, and a bunch of crisis actors. One other point before we move on here, because I was talking about space as a metaphor for mind control in the inner space. Lee Harvey Oswald was working for a company called Riley's Coffee at the time of the shooting. And by the way, at the time, he had recently seen The Manchurian Candidate and Suddenly, two Frank Sinatra films with the theme of assassinations. And at the time, it was speculated that these movies had an influence on him. I mean, predictive and concurrent programming have always been a facet of media. Always. They have never been separate. But at the time, Oswald worked at Riley's Coffee. So reporters went to go see what was he like, according to his coworkers. They go over there, everybody's gone. Guess where they went? They all went to go work for NASA. Or close to it, adjacent to. And the significance of it is this. If Stanley Kubrick was involved in the staging of Apollo 11, this makes a lot more sense if you really think about it. Because he released Dr. Strangelove about the bomb on the assassination date of JFK, 11/22/1963. Coincidence? Not really. But if he's involved in the Apollo 11 thing, it makes sense because before he was arrested and killed, or rather before he was killed, Oswald had written in a letter to his girl at the time that he was going to go work with his Riley Coffee friends for NASA. So I'm thinking, okay, it makes sense if NASA isn't merely limited to space fakery, but all of the psyops here on the ground. So maybe Lee Harvey Oswald was working for NASA. It's like, but he didn't go to the moon or the moon project. He went to the grassy knoll. He went to a different project, same director though. Oh yeah, Kubrick's doing the moon landing. He's doing the assassination. He's going to be doing these other events. And so it just seems to me that that could be a clue here because there are no patsies. Thomas Crooks was not a patsy. Ryan Routh, not a patsy. Oswald, not a patsy. These are actors. They're buddies backstage. And that's a difficult proposition for some who think somebody must have died. You know, Thomas Crooks looks just like, not just like the Riddler, but also like a young Bill Gates. But specifically the Riddler resemblance is what I'm pointing out. Because these shooters are often associated with the Joker, the Riddler. These overlapping, because of their essentially, depending on which one, but with this Thomas Crooks character, it was definitely the Riddler. But one, he wasn't killed, he's just an actor. Two, his resemblance to the Riddler makes a lot of sense when you look at the bigger picture, and also it's a clue. Because when Trump went back to Butler, and note the date, or the number of days, 84 days after he was shot, 84. 84 days after he shot, he goes back to Butler, and they have a moment of silence at 6:11. So think about that, 84, 6:11. These numbers are so consistent, they tell a story. And they have a moment of silence for the victims, for Trump's ear, at 6:11, for his earlobe. That's what he called it, earlobe. And a male singer performs Ave Maria. In the Batman movie, Batman is interrogating the Riddler, pounding on the plexiglass. What did you do? What did you do? And instead of saying, oh yeah, I'm going to blow up these dams and flood Gotham, and Gotham's going to be underwater on 11/6, again, 6/11, 11/6, he sings Ave Maria. So that's the Riddler's song, as it references Gotham underwater on 11/6. So then on 6/11, he shoots Trump. 84 days later, moment of silence at 6:11 p.m., and they play that song. These various events are just endlessly intriguing. Like the Reagan shooting. I mean, we just connect these things together. You can see it's all one story. The shooting of Ronald Reagan by John Hinckley Jr., inspired by Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver, played by De Niro. So there's layers to this one, but the other guy that was shot was Brady, who died 33 years later of the head wound. It was ruled a homicide, but, you know, the Brady bill and stuff. Brady was shot died 33 years later on 8/4. So 33/8/4. Trump was shot at 6:11 and 33 seconds. Look, we got to mind map this stuff because there are different areas of focus here. There's the very basic storylines and the fake news and the special effects debunking. Then there's the metascript, the subtext, the subplots, and then there's all the code, the numbers. And then there's the occult stuff, the ritual stuff. So there are so many layers to this thing. Steve says 33 injured in Russia's attack on Kyiv in news the other day. When I saw that bus running through that crowd, I was like, let me treat this as real until proven fake, I guess, or let's just assume it's possible. Let's wait for the facts. Like it's probably fake. Burden of proof isn't mine. But when I looked at it at first, I thought, okay, that van, it'd be really hard to fake. But then I remembered watching all these videos of stuntmen getting hit by cars. And it's actually a very common stunt. Like if you're going to be a stuntman, you got to learn how to get hit by cars. It's not hard to do. And they do it safe. But in that video, I noticed a lot of people being hit were wearing uniforms, like soccer uniforms or something, which if it were a hoax or a stunt, it'd be that much easier to identify the acrobats who would be performing. But as soon as I saw the van roll up, I'm like, okay, it's got to be a hoax because it's number 33. Rebel Black says X is going crazy. What the hell? X is ground zero for disease X. The WHO said there's going to be the big one that's going to take us all down, disease X. And I said, no, disease X is the mind virus, the madness. If you haven't watched The Madness, it's bad, I'm sure. I don't watch it for entertainment. I watch Netflix to know what's next on the agenda. We're on Planet Netflix. And The Madness is all about the mind viruses that radicalize people to go become racist right-wing killers, basically. Like the Turner Diaries. Ultimately, it comes down to the Turner Diaries, which is why it all goes back to Waco. Waco, American Apocalypse. Penguinotti says, Mike Rothschild blocked me on X after I profiled his photo next to Crooks. Oh, I'd love to see that tweet. Yeah, I remember you sent me a message and you said you think that he might be Crooks. And he is Trump deranged. If they needed an actor to play the role of Thomas Crooks in the Butler psyop, Mike Rothschild would be perfect. He wrote the book exposing, or rather the book documenting Q. And so he's very anti-Trump and anti-Q. But is he? Yeah, I think he totally would. He even spoke to Congress about this. So I think you're right. I think Mike Rothschild shot Trump's ear. If you don't know who he is, he wrote a couple of books. I like his book, Jewish Space Lasers. I like his books because he does a lot to explain how, under the guise of fighting the globalists and fighting George Soros, you're just hearing repackaged conspiracies, and none of the conspiracy theories are original. Like, which conspiracies are real? None of them. But none of the mainstream ones are real either. Like, it's actually a matter of, these are two different, not even competing, these are parallel paradigms. Yeah, I mean, they're competing for air, but they coexist for a reason. They're the controlled left and right. I guess it's just a circus, but no, they don't want it to ever reconcile. They're never going to make friends. It's like wrestling. What if you had wrestling like WWE next year? They're not going to fight. No, they're just going to be friends. No, you wouldn't have any reason to go. The bread and circuses is all about your attention. It's not like they're trying to get your money. They want your attention. So here's an example, a synopsis of one of our think tank conversations. So this is what the bot's going to do. Every few hours, it's going to deliver these summaries. So if you were away from the Discord server or you want to know what we're talking about, here's an example. Space symbolism and celestial immunity, key concepts. Space as the new mind control battleground. The ISS conducted immunity studies with the robotic arm getting vaxxed by space debris. Core debate whether psyops involve actual deaths or are entirely staged. Synchromorpheus and Tim uphold the nobody died model, arguing that psyops require no casualties, just media programming, whereas death clingers are emotionally invested in real casualties, and they are vulnerable to emotional manipulation. Some figures, like Calcified Lies, allegedly shifted from no death to pro-death positions and are viewed as compromised or emotionally manipulated. Anyway, it's very useful here. Trump, Lincoln, Echo, emphasis on penny symbolism, Lincoln, Trump overlaps in imagery, Final Destination penny as prophetic imagery, USDA hangs a banner of Trump next to Lincoln, and yeah, Trump just killed the penny. But that was a bot extracted collection of quotes and a list of topics that we were discussing, just so people know what we're talking about that day. We were talking about some of the predictive comic books in Japan causing people to divert their vacation destinations. Trump pandering to his Q crowd. Not a lot new there. This is the big one for me, though. This magazine called Empire that has the Space Needle superimposed over EMP. And again, this played right before the movie Final Destination. And what this really illustrates is how these narratives, these stories involve giving us the visuals so that the fake news event has a greater impact. And the messaging is so consistent that at this point, it's predictable. It is 100% predictable. I'm like, okay. The timing of it too. So one more point here, we were discussing, what if we're wrong? What if this doesn't happen as advertised? And I would say, well, that would be the anomaly. Like, we weren't wrong about Trump getting shot. We were pointing at all of the relevant media leading up to it and the reinforcement, what happened after, and how many examples, a ridiculous number of examples. I did a deep dive on this. So we're not wrong, and we're just simply applying a model here. We're applying a bit of common sense, not common sense, but rather as media critics, we know that the foreshadowing results in something occurring that was foreshadowed. It's like the structure of the story here seems to indicate a plot twist. And it seems to imply the story, the meta story, is the sinking of the West, America falling, as symbolized by the One World Trade Tower, by the Space Needle, by the sinking of the boat, the Titanic, or the boat hitting the bridge. So this is like a buildup. Then we have all the blackout stuff, which has been very consistent. White noise, leave the world behind, symbolism in Fantastic Four leading up to this, canary black. I mean, just so many examples of it. It just keeps piling up. The trailer before Fantastic Four was for the Thunderbolts, which had stuff falling from the sky. And the consistent pattern has been, and this is very clear in retrospect, they inundate you with imagery, a barrage of imagery, so you've already pre-experienced it. Like, we've already experienced the Space Needle being destroyed so many times. And it's all going into your subconscious. It's all building up so that it'll be associated appropriately with the memories, the experience of the news. So your memories, and this is the misinformation effect. The misinformation effect is very well documented. I think the Mandela effect was a psyop based on implementing the misinformation effect. Like, I think it's a mass mind control experiment. The Mandela effect is a mind controlled experiment. I would call it not MK Ultra, but it's 100% mind control. Like, let's see if we can weaponize the misinformation effect and create faulty eyewitness testimony and get millions of people to misremember very specific things. And they did it. And the mechanism by which it works has to do with the retroactive interference of new information with memories, and how the new information can actually influence how you recall things. So they're providing us a lot of content that they'll be interacting with later. And then the movies after the fact will influence how you recall the thing. I think this is why so many people who were nowhere near 9/11 claim vivid recollections or speak with authority. Oh, people died, I saw. No, you're recalling all these memories in a filing cabinet in your mind that contains scenes from 50 different movies, including Final Destination, all these horror films, and it's all just influencing your perception of what happened on the news. Rebel says, I'm witnessing a paradigm shift on X in real time. 6-1 is when the madness officially begins. Well, we saw with the Sinners, and then what followed with the Carmelo Anthony, Shiloh Hendrix, and then Ye comes out with his Hail Hitler song. So you can see they're releasing the Kraken. And I'm looking at it as they're making it pretty apparent that when something big happens and it's caused by domestic violent extremism, they're going to be able to blame the internet, specifically X. Look what X did. Look what Elon Musk did. Mind junk. Remember, I've been talking about how he's spreading a bunch of mind junk on the internet in cyberspace, a commons, so commons is going to have to be saved from him. The richest man on earth, a billionaire, disrupted an entire system for the collective. And this is an argument against the existence of billionaires. We can't have billionaires. We can't have rich individuals, and the system allows them to exist because look what they do. And in a parallel story here, he is destroying low Earth orbit with his cheap CubeSats and his space junk. So you see the hazard here is that one piece of space junk hits another, and before you know it, you have the Kessler syndrome and everything falls. Or it's no longer predictable up there because of the disruptions. We can no longer go to space. So he is simultaneously disrupting our commons of cyberspace and outer space. And as I said before, outer space is a metaphor for inner space. And cyberspace is where our inner space, our minds, are directly targeted. So they're going to say, in order to protect your mind from Musk, we're going to have to regulate the internet and quarantine against disease X. So this is a parallel story, celestial immunity I was mentioning earlier. It's a parallel story where they're getting us used to the idea on various scales and situations of we need to not allow the individual to disrupt an entire system. Like one guy has the virus and won't get fixed. Well, now everybody's going to get sick. One person has a very bad meme and now everybody's going to become racist. You see how it's a lot of slippery slope thinking. Biden clone is trending hard. I won't lie. This is fun to watch. Okay, I can't wait to catch up. I'll go to the Discord and I'll post some links when I get a look at this. But Trump is sharing some stuff that is taking this into a realm of, like, we're going down Q Street apparently. Biden is some kind of a cloned android. I mean, my best guess, if Biden isn't Biden, is that Biden is Bo. And so far, I don't know anybody else has posited this, but I look at the skulls. Skulls don't shrink with age. President Biden's skull is smaller than Vice President Biden. But if you compare President Biden and Vice President Biden and Beau Biden, his deceased son who died at 46, I was thinking, well, maybe he didn't really die at 46. But they phased him out and got him training to play the role of President 46. Because the skull of Beau Biden and President Biden are a match. But the Vice President Biden's skull is bigger than both of theirs. But that was my Phrenology report for the night. I mean, it could be Jim Carrey. No way he's played by James Woods. The nose wouldn't fit in that mask. And as I said with Synchromorpheus, if you're not looking at world events through the lens of WWE kayfabe, you're off your rocker. All right, thanks for the comments, calls, and wrenches. Again, you got the wrench, just go over to the post sections and you'll see the link to join the Discord. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. I have to catch up on archives, and I'll try to get all those out tonight. But we're just a few days away from 6/11, which, again, we're not making hard predictions in a sense, but we're just, in fact, let me do a mind map, and then we'll show you where we're at and what we're really saying. But again, all signs point to Seattle Space Needle as a very important iconic symbol, and in the next 9/11 event, it's going to go. This is Chief Crow Auto Hoax. I'll try to catch up tonight with the archives. Thank you for your comments.
I'm on Auto Hoax, and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes.
My buddy, my buddy and me.
Telecommunications Act of 1996.
96, y'all.
Gonna filter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a doomed little donkey like Eeyore. I'm gonna be on Auto Hoax. Auto Hoax, and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dreams.